Water Bridge, the band. I'm sitting with 3 of the 5 members. Let me ask you who you are and what you do in the band and also what you had for breakfast while we were at it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nick. I play drums for the band. For breakfast, I had a breakfast bun from Barney's at the beachfront.
Hey, Alex Cromert here. Do vocals and bass for High Water Bridge. Honey on toast for breakfast, thanks.
My name's Kendall Beeden. I do also vocals and bass. We are interchangeable vocals and bass players. And for breakfast, I'm having this lovely beer.
And you have just put up an album onto YouTube for free. The album is full of original music coming out of Port Elizabeth. Thank you for doing what you did. So people could go over to YouTube, search for High Water Bridge, and they hear an album of 12 songs for
12
free.
tracks, yeah. Probably use Senescence as the search as well. That's
You're
the name
going
of
to
the
have
album.
to spell that out for me.
Senescence.
Is there a background to that?
So we've got track 2 on the album is called Senescence. And it's one of the ones that I do vocals on and wrote some lyrics for when I was doing some research before it was actually called Senescence. One of the themes in there is immortality. Researching immortality took me to things like the tropical hydra, which is a freshwater organism, which its cells just continue to divide and divide and divide, and it basically, they're still a part of that original thing. So it's going on for hundreds, thousands of years, who knows. Senescence encaptured what the kind of vibe we were going for there. There's a bit of reptile themes in there as well, some Garden of Eden. So yeah, it all came together and it was kind of rolling off the tongue and the guys were digging the track, so it became the album name, yeah. There's some awesome artwork from Nick on that one too.
Yeah, Nick also does, besides being the drummer, he's also took care of all the video and design, yeah, all the album artwork, multitasking drummer. Awesome to have.
You are a multitasking ululator, I believe, at times as well. You played is it the euphonium?
I did play some euphonium on this album, which is a brass instrument, a very obscure brass band instrument. It's not even in the orchestra.
You clearly know your way around. How come?
Well, that's a remnant of high school. In high school, I played in the brass band at school. I played that thing from age probably 9 until 18, every day of my life, at about 7 in the morning. So I got all my early days in school because you had to have band practice before school started. I did the whole route. I did music as a subject in school. I did Royal School's exams on that thing. I went up to grade 8 before I left school. I had a long relationship with the euphonium in my teenage years, and then I didn't have one for about 10 years. And I managed to get one again. And yeah, it's kind of creeping back into the music.
Remind me of your instrument, Alex?
A bass guitar and vocals.
And your background with both of those?
Yeah, I've been playing music for a long time. More self-taught than coming through the academic side of it, like Kendall. Mostly guitar at the beginning, then made a switch to bass guitar a few years ago. And the way the 5 of us came together, it sort of seemed to fit me playing bass as well and contributing that way as well as vocals. So
yeah.
Well, also Jason was playing keyboard bass for a lot of the songs when I joined. That was kind of between Alex and Jason playing bass on the keyboards. I think that was also one of the initial ideas, was to have Jay playing some keyboard bass. He actually did so on a fair number of tracks on the album. It's keyboard bass. So yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of mix it up like that.
And you've been making weird sounds into microphones for years.
Yeah,
decades.
long years. Yeah, it's a refined art now. But it's cool. What I really like about High Water Bridge is that it's really easy, the way musicians gel together. It's really easy to just be very spontaneous over the top of it. Look, when you record, you have to formalize a lot more of the elements. So things that were spontaneous or you had a rough outline for in the jam room or in a gig situation, you kind of have to formalize that and say, you have to make a commitment. You have to make a choice and say, okay, I'm going to do it this way. For posterity, we're going to do it this way. So when you record, you have to look at it from that aspect. But in their formation, a lot of these songs were more spontaneous. You've got a rough outline, and everyone knows the rough outline. But over the top of that, you can just freeform, basically.
Gentlemen, I'd be very proud of leaving that album for posterity. It's a really nice album. It's got excellent editing. You edited. No, is that the right word? You edited,
Yeah,
but
I would
other people
say
did some other things.
My role was basically editing. I recorded a lot of the stuff. So I sat with everyone while they tracked their parts and pressed play. I did that job. And then once all the parts have been recorded, now you've got these layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of different things. And you have to kind of turn it into a coherent piece of music. Cut everything away. So the way I go about it, I would say it's analogous to maybe like sculpting. You kind of have a lump of clay, which is your raw audio data, and then you cut stuff away until you have a shape. So it was very similar to that for me, like the way you sort of see WAV files on a screen in front of you, just in rows and layers and layers, and you have to make sense of it. But it's a multi-layered process recording. That's only now the first part. What comes after that is the mixing, which Leandro did. Mixing is like the tonal shaping of each individual sound rather than the overall song. You know, it's like now the nitty-gritty of each individual sound. How do these sounds fit together? Does the sound have too much mid-range? You know, what reverb can we put on the sound to make it sound bigger? It's like all those elements of the music. So that's a completely different process now.
And I can hear that you've thought about that very carefully, because not only is the music original, it is vibey in my head right now. Da 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 da. Could you guys do that better than me, maybe? Is this a good
none
time?
of us are even the person who sings that part, so I don't think we could.
Yeah.
But
To be
you
honest,
must be familiar with the...
I'm familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah, we have jammed all of these songs, and we can jam them all. But since the recording process has happened,
You're much more familiar with your own
and it's
music.
added a lot more layer and texture to each song. And we're hoping to actually be able to jam them the same way they recorded going forward.
Things like the euphonium that we're mentioning as well, that's just something that comes in there and adds another something special and takes it to a new place. This Juno, I don't know if you spotted the Juno keyboard.
There is a long history to the Juno in music in Port Elizabeth, thanks to Mr. Kendall Beeden.
No, what? They weren't even my keyboards. The one that I used when I was a kid belonged to the guy I used to play music with back in those times. And the one we used for this recording belongs to Mike Didge, who's a local musician who plays the didgeridoo. He's like a ninja on the didgeridoo, basically. Yeah, he plays djembes as well. He's very involved with drum circles and all things rhythmical. Luckily, he's got one of these amazing analog, well, it's sort of partly analog, synthesizer sitting away in his room there, and he lent it to us for the recording, so we were lucky to get hold of that. It makes amazing noises.
He was actually going to play some didge on a couple of tracks. We were due to play Manville Festival this year until things sort of fell apart.
It'll be great to see you joining the band, Mike.
Yeah.
I'll be there watching that live for sure. So you were saying about the Juno, there are other instruments and other
Just
things that
little
come to the
things we
foreground.
didn't have when we were in the jam room writing and working on the songs to begin with. So there's little flourishes and a little bit of extra stardust has been put into the album, and we can't wait to start jamming it again as well.
And you haven't been because of COVID.
Yeah.
And that's obviously going to have implications for live gigs that presumably you guys would be doing now that the album's out. People can hear it more and recommend you and share and like the video, post it onto your social media, that kind of thing. Once people do that, you presumably would get more gigs. So COVID's just kind of a...
Yeah, and who knows, gigs might only happen next year again, so if we're lucky.
But at the same time, I think if it wasn't for lockdown, we might not have finished the album that quickly. Who knows? I mean, it definitely sped up the process. Yeah.
Gave us some focus.
Yeah.
Coming back to the mixing, did you get an opportunity to add your own little secret touch while these guys weren't looking? I did wonder at times, because, I mean, at times you were ululating
Secret sauce.
and you've done beatboxing. and a variety of things. As a profile piece, that album is excellent. Really, for you and Leandra, I just want to foreground the mastery behind the editing and the mastering. It is really well done, and I think you obviously had space to put 12 songs of original music together. I really can't get over this. I still feel really proud to be in a room of musicians who could create original music out of Port Elizabeth, which kind of can be stuck in a bit of a rut with creating original music, not just because it's not created, but because there isn't really an outlet. You've put it out there, and I feel, hopefully, like you guys are going to create a little bit of a stir so that people start asking for more original music. Thank you for doing what you've done.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. That's something that's on my mind a lot, about the environment as musicians we exist in, and how it doesn't tend to support anything that's maybe a little bit left of mainstream. I was actually, funnily enough, reading an article, Hagen Engler, who's a well-known writer from PE. He wrote about Port Elizabeth, and he was quoting Tim Hopwood, who's a visual artist and a musician as well. And they were talking about being artists in PE. And it was interesting to hear their perspective, because they're also both guys who are not mainstream. Their art represents something far more deep. They were saying, how it doesn't encourage anything like that. We live in a culture that values, the vast majority of music shows in PE are kind of tribute shows, and these kind of productions that
it's nice to have those. It would be nice to have original music
and
too.
What's cool about that is it does value the technical side of music. That's what you find in Port Elizabeth, is like the standard of musicians very high. Like, they're really, really good musicians, but there's no culture of now you must translate that into creating your own set of music.
Well, if there isn't an audience for it,
there's no audience for it. They kind of their hand is forced in a way into existing in those. And you kind of got to do what you can, basically.
Yes, people ask for more original live music. You've mentioned Hagen Engler. That reminds me of an area I want to go with this conversation, because you represent quite a lot of Port Elizabeth's music background. Late 90s, early 2000s, there was a lot of original music around, and it's dwindled quite a lot. You guys have kept the flag flying high. Thank you very much for doing that. But before we do, there's two missing members here.
Niels is the guitarist, and he is an absolute riff machine. He's already got about 9 albums worth of songs waiting. He is writing a bulk of them as well. I think that's also why, like we were talking about before, where there's 3 different ways we could go with bass. We could have synth bass. We could have Kendall doing something, me doing something, and really spice it up and keep it interesting. And then there's Jason King. He's been jamming keyboards and drums, and been in Jedi Rollers and a few projects with me before as well. And he's actually a songwriter in his own as well. He's got quite a few keyboards and comes up with riffs and things that he brings to the party in the jam room, and some of them have turned into some really good songs as well.
Yeah, the vast majority of the layering that comes onto this album is via all his gear. He's the one who brings all the sound toys to the party to make the ambient spaces, and to like Alex calls it, sprinkle the stardust on top of the foundation, because those little flourishes often are what can set your music apart. I think if people listen to our music and say, it sounds different, or it's unusual, or it's got to do with the way that all those elements interact with each other. It's not just those core kind of drum and bass. I mean, that's the heart of it, the drums and the bass. It's the heart of any piece of music. But those, all the kind of interplay of everything on top of that as well is, it's a big part of what makes music unique and idiosyncratic. If you can get those going in an unusual way. And Jason's got a lot to do with that kind of side of the band. So, it's a vital role.
Thank you, Jason, for what you do. Nick, if I asked you what the genre was for your kind of music, what would you say?
By default, we would fall probably under the rock, obviously. But we kind of coined our own term, spectral rock, mostly because of what Jay does to the band, and a lot of the surprises Kendall's thrown into the recordings and all of that stuff, with a lot of atmosphere, interesting background noises and that sort of thing, gives it that spectral element.
And delay guitar.
Yeah, lots of needless delay guitar. And yeah, so we coined spectral rock. We thought that would be quite a cool term for us.
I like it.
Yeah, the guitar sound is, I would also say, it's a really at the root of a lot of our sound is that delay guitar sound. The one review we've had of our album so far actually sort of mentioned U2 as an analogous kind of sound, funnily enough, which we don't get at all.
I have to interject and complain.
No, but I was
who
trying
wrote
to...
that?
It was actually Nick's dad.
My old man, yeah.
Nick's dad, I think we have to have a conversation. So it's definitely a unique sound. You're pioneering your own sound. I think that's what one of the YouTube comments said, and it really stuck with me. You are pioneering your own sound in a cover city.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I just want to say I heard a bunch of different influences, which is absolutely not to say that it sounded like these other bands, but I heard influences from Mother, the Pixies, Portishead. I could name several more. Beck definitely comes to mind. Tricky. There's just so much influence to the band. So I don't know if you want to talk about, Nick, you seem to be okay with the question about influence.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all add something from what music we've listened to growing up. I listen to a vast array of music, always predominantly enjoying metal and moving into funk music and all that kind of thing that I enjoy. But I think we all add something, obviously, as 5 people that we love about music. We add it to the band,
Yeah.
But
It's a nice way of dodging the question. I'm very, very impressed. Yeah.
It's a giant soup, eh?
I should
It's
go into
just
politics.
a massive soup. Like, I think that's the point you're trying to make.
Yes.
Spectrum. Spectral rock.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of elements that get thrown in there that are quite disparate in a lot of ways. But yeah, the way it comes together is also unique. You could take a different bunch of people with the same kind of general influences and they'd arrive at something quite different probably. It's just how it happens to come together in that space and that time amongst the people who happen to be there. I don't think we've ever had a conversation about we want to sound like this and this and this band, like while being in the jam room. We've never had a conversation like that. It just
everything just happens so naturally. Just like
it really was an organic process. Like someone brings a riff, Niels comes with a guitar riff, Alex comes with a bass line, Jay's got a weird like sampled beat on his laptop and a keyboard riff, or someone's got a beat, whatever. Like however it happens, there's a starting point, and everyone throws their bit on top of that, and how it comes up is anyone's guess really. And you got to learn to not be a control freak about it as well. Like if someone is wanting to push it in a certain direction, it's almost creating like resistance in a way. You got to not have that too much. You got to allow it to happen. It's quite an interesting process to be a part of as someone who writes their own songs as well, because you're used to kind of having control of all the last little details of the element if you're used to writing your own songs. So now I'll be part of a process where you have to completely surrender that. It's really cool, actually. I really like that about music. Defies control freakery all the time.
Yeah, I haven't really been in a band with this many songwriters as well, which I think adds to it as well. I'll bring some things on bass, and Kendall's got a lot of different ways he'll write a song, even just from a loop station, for example. Jay's writing songs, Niels and Nick's bringing his own thing. So in that way, everyone has to sort of hang on to your ego as well for it all to gel.
You're obviously singing together on a lot of songs and then separately on some. So that's quite nice to have. You don't know what to expect with the next one. Who's next? Who's going to be singing?
There seems to have been already an element of confusion in the listening population about what is going on the singing sides.
Which band is this?
Yeah, is this the same band? What's happening here? Is that the same person? I don't know.
So we've spoken about Jason King, drummer from the Jedi Rollers. That was very popular during the 90s and maybe early 2000s.
No, yeah, it wasn't 90s at all. Rollers was from year 2000. Actually, that was the year that band started, was the year 2000 on the dot. So it makes a nice, easy marking point.
That's good to hear, because I arrived to the band scene in Port Elizabeth in about 2000, and I felt like I lost out a little bit, because at one point, didn't the Rollers have 12 members?
Yeah, it used to be a giant, like, mass band jam kind of vibe. It's very loose. There were no songs. There was like a chord, maybe. There was a chord sequence, and then that was it. and you kind of went. But then it kind of progressively evolved into a structured band, like a 5-piece structured band, as people went on their own kind of journeys. And Nillis was actually also the guitar player in that band. And also the heart of that band, by the time it ended up there, was basically his riffs. So, there's history there of interacting with structures of music he creates and, making songs out of them. Yeah, and it's useful to have a keyboard player as also drummer, because the more angles you're coming at a piece of music from, the better,
And I loved the angle of da 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 da. What do you guys call that? What is that genre? Do you know what I'm talking about?
C-legs.
C-legs.
When
So
you come
what-
get
It's catchy.
waiter.
What genre is that?
When you come and you summon a waiter, deliver the fudges and double the flavor. Gonna swim with the big alligator, 'cause we caught in a storm simulator.
Well, I'd say it's quite actually inspired by like a Jamaican style of like rapping over reggae, dub, rugger, it's a dance hall. There's all these kind of Jamaican-based dance musics where the guys do this kind of rapping over the rhythms. So it's basically my very like poor takeoff of transposed through like a kind of an English-speaking trying to write poetry kind of framework. Through that framework, a very bad takeoff of like Jamaican style rapping. And, it's kind of a reggae song and it's got that dub element and that skank to it. So it kind of seems appropriate,
It's really good.
When
I
in
really enjoy
Rome,
it.
as so to speak.
I'd highly recommend that song. It comes out of nowhere, that almost choir like la 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 la, and you go weird places, really weird, nice like highs and lows. You've got a great range between you. Really chuff, guys.
Yeah, a lot of the feedback we're getting is people are they feel like every song has so many surprises in it, which is what I always enjoy about our music. There's just so many twists and turns. Suddenly there's like something thrown at you, different vocalists, different genres, sort of styles. Yeah, so it's very varied.
Alex, could I ask you about the song where the lyrics are clearly about the desert? You seem to be very fond of the desert. Did I hear the lyrics spiritual emergency?
Spiritual legacy. Yeah.
Spiritual legacy.
The desert, it talks to me, leaving a spiritual legacy. The desert, it talks to me, leaving a spiritual legacy.
That's sort of got a different vibe as well to it, that song. I wanted to get that whole desert vibe and sort of a voyage out there, camel travel. I sort of like painting pictures where I can with the lyrics, just leaving it open to interpretation. So glad it hit you somewhere there. So that one's got its own vibe. Yeah, like you say, it's a varied album. There's so much different stuff on there, different songs, different sounds. And it started a very little simple way and ended up into this almost 6-minute epic now. With camels being sampled at the end of the song. We've got some crazy bongo in there, slide guitar. It just grew and grew.
High Water Bridge on YouTube. Just type it in and the full album is clearly available, but there are also a few music videos.
We're also on other platforms, not just YouTube. And maybe Nick wants to elaborate on all the other platforms.
Yeah. We I think so far we're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube Music,
Deezer, Amazon.
Deezer and Amazon Music right now.
Apparently it's about 150 now. The streaming platforms are just growing and growing. So we've signed up to be on all of them. Might as well be out there. So yeah, we hope you guys can find this and enjoy it.
Definitely find it. It's really worth a listen, especially if you're in South Africa. I must say, it's just so refreshing. You bringing your own unique sound to the table. Great to hear. And the music videos are also nice to have. Also free on YouTube. You just have to type High Water Bridge, because I know the album comes up pretty early on, and then there are a few other options. All of them are your productions. Is that right?
Yes. All made them ourselves. They're available on Facebook to watch and YouTube. And yeah, we just thought we'd throw them in just to add a new dynamic to the music and make it get a bit more reach and a bit more engagement from people that listen to the music. I think the videos just add a nice touch, and it's something that I can do, and I work in that kind of industry, so like it's worked out perfectly for us.
What is the one in the lower floor of a dilapidated building with water on the ground and the woman?
Oh, Julienne.
That's the one.
That was actually all free stock footage, so nothing was actually filmed. I don't actually go out and film. I'm not a filmographer. I don't film video and stuff. I just work with motion graphics and graphic design. And I stumbled upon her in a stock footage site. There were a whole bunch of series of clips, and I just put them together to the song, and it just worked out perfectly.
Nice.
I think a lot of people are like, oh, where did you film that? Where in PE is this? And blah, blah, blah. But
that's exactly what I was thinking.
yeah, it's actually it's all free stock footage. Worked out perfectly.
But I mean, that's all. It's not like anyone's claiming that we filmed it or anything. That's Even in the last video, Nick put a big disclaimer. I saw this is all public domain footage.
Just that people don't ask
not trying to like rip anyone off or anything. But that's like most of the stuff we do. We're not trying to sort of chip at the system or anything. We just trying to make it as creative, make the interface between like the audience and the song like a little bit more. These days, a lot of stuff revolves around video, so it's like a nice little point of engagement. And if you can take something that's free in public domain and make something effective out of it, like that's first prize for people like us who are like independent musicians, you know what I mean? We don't have budget to go and like shoot a 100,000 Rand music video. You know what I mean? We're just looking to create something simple and powerful and engaging that works with the music.
Yeah.
And those visuals work perfectly with the music. You got to say, it's like almost uncanny how well they fit,
Yeah.
Is it all stock footage?
Pretty much, except for like the lyric videos where I did do a lot of manipulation and photoshopping. Obviously in Drummer Donkin, I used photography of the Donkin and just manipulated things a bit. But generally most of the actual video footage is free stock footage.
Yeah, there's a lot of like manipulation, like you say, and like editing and like tweaking. And,
to make
like you reverse and speed stuff up.
Yeah,
and you
for
cut
sure.
stuff up, and there's still like a lot of video work that goes into it.
Strange Little Man.
Oh yeah.
Is there much of an influence here?
Well, in that I was a member of that band and I'm a member of this band, yes. But that's probably about as far as it goes, you know what I mean? There's a continuity in everything you do. I've been listening to some music that these guys made, like from some other band called the Henleys from back in the day. Again, you would say it doesn't sound like High Water Bridge, but there's that element that is, it's like a continuous element because it's the same people. You can hear it in the grooves or the way Alex will phrase something in the singing. Even though that band had a violin and was kind of an acoustic band, very different to High Water Bridge. We don't have. That's about the one instrument we didn't manage to get on our album was an acoustic guitar. I actually said that to Nellis at one point. I was like, "Hey, there's one thing we didn't do. We didn't record any acoustic guitar because we did just about everything else." There's always a continuity. Like even if you go and listen to an old Jedi Rollers album, you'll hear Nellis playing one of his riffs, and you'll think, yeah, okay, I can hear that in this High Water Bridge sound, even though it's from 15, 20 years ago or whatever. It's there's always a continuity.
I would maybe even say another band we haven't mentioned here is your old band, Dave, Tofu Goat.
Tofu Goat,
I really enjoyed watching. I was at your guys' gigs and a few jam room rehearsals, and I really liked the sound there. And I would even say that there's some influence into a High Water Bridge from where that was going as well. Yeah. So
that was almost kind of like the prototype of what Jay and I, because we had like another little intermediary thing we did as well, which was just a 2-piece electro project called Fringe Control, which didn't really get off the ground.
You've been around, my friend.
No, well, it's just like the things evolve quickly because no one hangs around for long. You know how it is in PE. Everyone's got to get on with life, So nothing lasts. So basically, the things evolve quickly and they keep coming. And if you want to be involved with it, you have to keep going. So I would say even like a lot of the stuff we were trying to do in Fringe Control, we now were in like a new band, and we are trying to like bring that same element that we were just doing in this other little thing to that. But now there's a live drummer, which is what we thought was missing from that project. It was all program beats. And we were like, this sounds cool, but there's something missing. There's like humans are missing from this. So now we got the chance to kind of take that mindset of what we were going for in that band and put it now into this new melting pot. So yeah, everything kind of influences everything else. You know what I mean?
And your previous bands, could you remind me?
Yeah, so there was the Henleys. We used to gig around PE with like an acoustic act, yeah. And from there, I was jamming in the XXOs. We also played 12 gigs in a year. Then there was...
That's quite a good rate. Better than us. 3 gigs in 3 years.
But not many bands make it to the finished album. It's difficult. It seems like it's just recording. But for us to actually have gotten here, I think is a real good achievement. So many bands, you don't get to record the stuff properly, and it's sort of just memories. Yeah, so I'm very proud of the guys here. And coming back to the video thing as well. Normally when you have a music video, lyric video, you've got some kind of art direction, script. Nick, he didn't need much from us besides the lyrics, and he just ran with it. Yeah, so I'm very, very happy the way that's turned out as well. Didn't think the video would be as, an important medium as it is today for to get a listener. For me, I don't mind listening to an album from beginning to end, no video. But for a lot of people, it makes a difference, and I'm really enjoying them as well. Yeah.
You chose wisely for the track lineup as well. Those first 4 songs really do pack a certain punch, I think. They're so different. Both of you are at the lead for vocals. There's a variety of different sounds and influences. In fact, by the end, one, like I said earlier, is asking what's next. This is an excellent thought process that has gone into compiling this stuff. So well done. You guys have been strategic as well.
It's difficult sometimes when there's 5 people and you all got your own ideas about like what can, but it was actually quite seamless, that process. To get a consensus was actually surprisingly easy. So I think it was quite easy to be objective about it eventually and kind of say, okay, look, honestly speaking, these 4 are probably the best sounding ones. If everyone's got their little favorites, when you got a 12-track album of music, everyone's going to have their favorite little corner that they relate to the most, and it's kind of special for them. But you also have to put that aside and say, like, okay, honestly speaking, trying to be objective. What are like the 4 best tracks here? And I think, yeah, you get to a point where you have to say, like, yeah, make a choice in that regard, and those ones were probably the 4 best sounding, because we recorded the drums in different studios and they had multi-track drums and stuff like that. There were certain technical elements that also enabled them to be the better sounding ones.
So we have a WhatsApp group with the band, and there can be endless debates. And funny enough, album track order just came together without even really a debate. Yeah, it's good. We all still feel the same way, it seems, about them.
Yeah, but you only got to the XXOs in your band history as well. There's stuff after that as well, with yes. Andrew Zaba and the gang.
Absolutely, there was Hectic Electric, 7-man band, which was cool, a lot of fun. And then from there we went. I ended up playing bass for Peking Duck with old Roger and Tristan. That was a lot of fun. And then just before High Water Bridge, Nick and I were picking up our Blue Jinx project again, which is jamming some blues punk rock, sort of as a 2-man band. And we wanted to add Jason and Bridget to it for some synth bass, keyboards, and female vocals. Then Kendall Neelis started coming and joining again as well. It sort of became this big collective before it eventually came to the core High Water Bridge.
It kind of makes the hairs on my arms stand up a little bit, thinking about how many connections there are to the Port Elizabeth music scene, spanning back 30 years almost. You said 2000 for Jedi Rollers, but there was something happening during the 90s as well, for sure.
There was. I think most of us were in high school during that era.
So we were emerging into the rock music.
But there were some of the older guys who had a scene in PE in the 90s. There was still a music scene in PE in the 90s. I mean, I had an older brother, and I remember there were places like Einstein's and Tico's where the live dudes would go play. And, things like this. There was like a bit of I remember hearing of bands like Chakra Tickle and Shooting Kareen. There were all these like bands with these very elaborate names.
That no one listening probably would know.
Yeah, and they were all local PE guys, and a lot of them went on to be musicians in other places. That's the thing about PE. Everyone leaves to be a professional musician somewhere else. You know? So like, yeah, we like the last of the diehard sort of creative dudes, basically.
Shards of broken glass, out of blood and out of land. Such a loaded word. Faith, it'll take its toll. Shattered shining hole.
Does anyone have any ideas about the progression, the digression, the flow of music thereafter? Because the 90s and the early 2000s, there were quite a few live bands that played original music. Not everyone necessarily liked their genre or what they were doing, but at least it was original. And it rapidly died off, in my opinion, near the end of the 2000s, the noughties, and then into the 10s. Is this a global thing, or is this more just our town?
No, I think it's very much tied into a cultural thing as well, like a larger global cultural thing. The way people interact with reality has changed a lot.
I think there's too many DJs have come onto the scene.
Yeah, people prefer like a virtual experience almost, you know. Obviously, there's still bands at big festivals and stuff, but to be a band these days, you've got to be tapping into like very big networks to make it work. This kind of thing of like the local band scene has kind of died out all over the world.
Do either of you have any ideas on this?
No, I agree fully. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Nick and I still go to check out a metal gig now and then, and you know your metal community is very tight-knit compared to other genres of music as well. And there's some good bands in PE at the moment, but Nick, am I right? It seems sort of less followed than back in the 90s and 2000s.
It's definitely
maybe?
a smaller following.
Yeah, people are just not as into live music. They're doing other things.
Yeah.
They're at home watching Netflix. They are doing this or that or whatever.
I suppose COVID really doesn't help lately.
They're going to drink their bespoke gin and stuff, you know, whatever. Music has kind of become a background commodity. The way music interacts with professional spaces is you're basically like a DJ. All the live musicians who are making a living out of being musicians are glorified radios or DJs.
Perhaps I'm asking too much of you, but why would you want to keep the live music alive, the original live rock? It's not just rock. There's a lot of influences there. There's a lot of categories of genre that come out when I think of your music, but why would you want to keep original live music alive?
We love it, and it's part of it. But at the same time, getting out there digitally and spreading your wings like via a podcast like this, for example, is how you reach people these days more than gigs. It's a fact. But we will carry on gigging, and hopefully they'll, you know.
Yeah, it's not. I don't even think it's necessarily about the gigging element. It's just you talking about like being a creative band, you know, like writing your own material, and because even a lot of the way we do it now, we do a lot of our songwriting via Dropbox. Like we use technology to write our songs like all the time. Like I don't think we could survive as a band if we didn't have Dropbox, and that's how we transfer ideas. So there is, Alex is right in that sense.
To explain a little bit more about the Dropbox thing, it's especially useful. What we started doing when we were doing the jams for High Water Bridge is recording every jam song by song on a cell phone. After the jam, someone puts it into the Dropbox. We all review it, work on it. What do we like? What don't we like? What could become a song? And it was the most useful songwriting tool you could ever imagine.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of these songs would still exist if we didn't actually document them.
Yeah, I wouldn't remember them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very interesting. I've never been a part of writing a set of music like that in my life before, so it was amazing for me to check how effective it was actually, and the results we ended up with. I mean, you heard the results, like they were really, really interesting, like kind of different. You know, it's not just approaching it from that purely in the moment jamming standpoint, although that generated a lot of the ideas. But now you kind of apply your left brain to it a lot more. You know what I mean? When you can sit back and listen to the songs, it's a nice interplay between left and right brain processes. Yeah, it can't all just be spontaneity and jamming.
How do you feel about the free aspect?
Well, I mean, I myself personally am happy with it. I just feel like we've created this art and we're just glad that it's out there for people to hear. I mean, I'm not into making money out of it, and we're not but it'd be great if we could. But at the end of the day, we're just glad that it's created and people get to enjoy it as much as we do. Like any artist, it's just great to get it out there and get feedback from people.
It felt a bit much to charge people to listen to a band they may not have ever heard of. Yeah. It's not why we're in it. We all love creating the music, so we just want it out there. And if it picks up momentum, then great. Maybe we'll do something different on a second album if we get to that point.
Just a donation box or something. If you could say a link to donations, because I would certainly donate. I know a lot of people would.
Well, yeah, we might do down the line, like do live streams, like album launch show, if we can find a space to do that nicely in. There's a lot of technical aspects that you have to take care of first before you're going to do a live stream show. But if we're not allowed to play a gig, if we're allowed to play a gig, maybe in 3 or 4 months' time, we can have a look at doing a show to launch the album, and hopefully we can make some bucks from that, charging entrance for a show like that. But like they say, initially it's you got to share what you make to alert people to your existence, and you can't be a capitalist about it. I don't think you get income from streaming, but those numbers are very small. You have to get an enormous amount of streams to generate even a pittance of money. So no one makes money from music from streaming, that's for sure.
And there's so much blood and sweat that goes into making it. You have dragged amps and instruments around, up and down stairs, into basements, dingy bar areas.
Yeah, like I say, there's a die-hard element to us. We that's a process I think all of us are very, I don't want to say attached to in a bad way, but it's part of who we are. We've been part of creating songs in bands since we're very young. And it's something we enjoy. And if something's your hobby like that, like your main number one passion kind of hobby, then you'll put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it, and it's more about the process of it than the rewards. I don't think any of us are too. The rewards are nice, don't get me wrong, but I don't think any of us are really. It's our prime motivation is the reward. I think a lot of us do it because it's just really who we are, and we'd go probably a little bit nuts if we couldn't do it. And it's an outlet, the same way some people play golf. It's an outlet, to express yourself with music. It's a good hobby. It's a good constructive hobby to have. More people should do it.
I would love to ask about the jam room.
Yeah, that's 5 stories of stairs that we keep lugging amps up and down.
Luckily, we don't
drum
have to,
kits.
but stuff is already there most of the time, but yeah.
Fewer stories than the old building that Jedi Rollers used to play.
The Fishers building. That was, quite a notorious space, and lots of sort of haunting stories and all sorts of crazy stuff went on there. But this is far more civilized. Elip House, we've been in there for a while now. That room is also very fundamental to the album we ended up with, and we nearly had to let it go because of lockdown. I was quite keen to be out of there. But for some of the guys, it's a space where, like I say, they can retreat to and have a space to do their thing. So, we actually still managed to hang on to it.
I think it's been in our hands, our group of friends and musicians for over 20 years. There was a band in PE called Evolver, Peter Pote. They had this room initially and handed over the keys. Kyle Robertson, good buddy of ours, took over as custodian. And he started keeping it going with his bands. Eventually, it ended up in High Water Bridge's hands, and somehow we're still there.
And there's been some international artists in there as well. There was some cat here for the One Blood Reggae Festival. Some famous Jamaican MC. He did his band practice with the dudes in that room. I remember some other international cats been through there. What was that guy who used to play keyboards with Carl in Everhard Dread?
Kevin Minkoff.
Yeah, there's been all sorts of different cats in that room over the years. It's like any jam room. It's also, if to be a fly on the wall of history, there would be madness. Some crazy tale would unfold. And the walls talk probably, and it influences the atmosphere of the music a lot, I think, as well.
I love the fact that driving through Port Elizabeth, I don't know if anyone listening lives in a conservative town, and it doesn't seem like a lot happens, but every now and again you're going to pass a building with a room in it where all sorts of crazy stuff has happened and jamming has occurred for decades. I love that. Every time I drive near that jam room area, I think there's that little magnet of energy that will always be so powerful in my life.
Yeah, you kind of pass those buildings on the highway, when you're driving on the highway towards the beach. You drive kind of past the back end of Govan and Becky there, and there's all those like derelict buildings, and they're all like to let now, and they're all falling apart. But a lot of those buildings have housed the artists being artists over the years. It's because it's cheap spaces for those kinds of people to do their thing, because rehearsal studios and whatnot are not plentiful around the place. Most of the time you have to play in your garage around here. We're lucky we've had these rooms, access to these rooms over the years. But they've dried up a little bit by bit, It's something of an anachronism, this little room we've got. It's like it's been alluded to, it's harkening back to an older
capsule.
Older days, time capsule. So if we lose that room, none of us know where else we can hire a room like that anymore. So
you'll find a place, because it's the people, and these people we've been in the scene for decades. So it's so nice that you've kept it alive. I'm really chuffed that you have. What do you think's next? Are you going to try and make more songs, more albums?
Yeah, we've actually got a lot more songs already.
There's a few in the pipeline. We had our lockdown remote
Our initial
jams.
writing process was enormously fruitful. We generated so much material. It was ridiculous. And we've got more on the way since lockdown. So we've already got enough material for another album. We have to polish it, I guess.
Yeah, no, quite surprising. I think sometimes bands can hit writer's block. And we've always just been amazed, like, okay, so let's listen to the Dropbox recording from last night. There's possibly 3 or 4 new skeletons there, It's it has been very fruitful.
Writer's block's not a problem when a band's produced an album, the songs of which they can play live to audiences, because you would do that for a year.
Mostly play live, We might have to rework a couple of them, sorry.
Yeah, we don't want to recycle anything. There's a bit of pressure to keep it evolving and keep it original, and you don't want to do a song that sounds exactly like one you've done before. So those are little things we have to watch out for, but new directions and new sounds are exciting.
When curtains can open again, due to COVID being not such a big deal, I think you should play the album a few times.
No, that's definitely our idea. Hey, if we're allowed to, we'll do it. And because it'll be like about an hour's gig. It's nice, 12 songs take about an hour, probably a bit more to play. It's a nice decent jam. Nice, good concert. We could even play an hour and a half show. We've got enough material to add on a little second addendum to it, but I guess 12 songs is enough. Seeing as the most songs we've ever played live is probably about 6 or 7, we probably shouldn't get carried away past 12. But we've got enough songs is the point to play a longer show. But it'd be nice to play like the album maybe from start to finish, something like that, like in order. It'd be fun to do something like that. At least we don't have to think about the set list too much.
No debating on that one.
I did notice something of a narrative element to some of your stories. It's like you're describing a process, a journey, the journey narrative. Is that right?
Sort of themes between songs. Yeah. We were actually chatting about this yesterday with the guys, and how there's elements in certain songs that do tie into each other, definitely lyrically. It really does feel like an album, 12 songs that all sort of tie into each other there. That's how it is.
Yeah, I think Alex's writing style as well is quite narrative, actually. It's like a lot of stories, if you look at the way the lyrics are constructed.
It's like riding a camel interdimensional travel. It's like riding a camel. I'm drinking champagne from an Austrian shell.
Even though you can read your own thing into it, they lend themselves to interpretation, which is cool. There is definitely, like threads that run through them and a lot of common themes and stories. Yeah, I thought that as someone who writes lyrics as well and looking at, that's what I like about this project as well, is like there's two people who write in the band, and that's cool because I can look at his process objectively and, learn what I can from it, and you can see my process and we can all learn from each other, you know what I mean? And the way it ties in and meshes is quite interesting. But Alex wrote, I think, the vast majority of the lyrics on the album. I kind of just chipped in the songs that didn't have lyrics, here and there, and it ended up being maybe like 4 out of the 12 songs on the album that I wrote lyrics for. So I think the vast majority of the lyrical impetus comes from Alex. Even the song titles, the lyrics I did write were from song, like code names. Alex gives the jams, as a naming process, because you can't just say jam 1, jam 2, jam 3, jam 4. You kind of have to give your jams code names. So Alex kind of decides those little working names. I'd say 8 or 9 times out of 10 that ended up being the final song name, and I would just write lyrics off that theme and I'd run with it, you know what I mean? So even on that sense, the lyrical kind of thing was quite collaborative, and that's maybe where those through running themes come from, is that everything was named by Alex and I was just running off that.
Yeah, Kendall's definitely a great lyricist in his own right. I really enjoy his writing. It's nice that it always felt, even if he wrote lyrics or I wrote the lyrics, it sort of felt like it still fitted High Water Bridge. We were writing for the same project.
Yeah, coming at it from wildly different angles. Sorry, less hand gestures while talking with the microphone.
Headphones would help.
Yeah, headphones would help. No, you've made your point several times over. Don't worry, Dave.
You win the argument.
You won long ago, bro. But unfortunately, we're lacking a bit of the technical details. But do you know about compressors? Like those help for wild spikes in volume discrepancy. Maybe we could have a short technical tutorial about little tools you can use that will make your life with that sort of thing.
Kendall's cheap, only charges $250 an hour. Eh?
Do contact Kendall Beeden, Kendall Beeden ON at gmail.com, because he really is a little masterful fairy with this stuff. I really am impressed.
Actually, I would say a lot of the technical elements come more from Leandra. She's actually the brains behind that side of it.
Well, whatever you did together, it works. It really works. It is a masterful
Look, when
mix.
it comes to the donkey work of the edit of the stuff, I will do that. But it takes listening as well. Leandra has a very practiced ear. There's too much 2000 hertz, like that sort of stuff. I'm listening to this guitar and I can hear there's a specific frequency in it that's too much. She's good with hearing that sort of stuff. You need an ear for that.
This room we're sitting in now is where the bulk of everything happened.
It's a padded cell.
I think Kendall gave the studio a name not too long ago. What did you call it?
Mothership.
I just called it Fringe Control Mothership, because I thought that appropriate. It was our old band name, but I thought it was a good name for the studio as well.
But yeah, this is as important as the jam room for us. I had some great times here sitting with Kendall. He's very patient. He's very good when it comes to editing. So, Dave, you'll be comfortable if you come for some compression lessons. But
I need to decompress, man.
Decompression.
Verbal discourse with a snack.
Yeah, you're not the first person to go on about that line. It's a bit of a crazy line.
Sounds impossible, but I truly believe I had a verbal discourse with a snake. It stared straight at me and said, I've got something you might like to take. Taste it, you could feel it, you could smell it. Anything about it, anything around it. Listen to it, I'll never forget.
I had second thoughts about it. Now everyone's bringing it up to sort of make me blush.
Well, we're not allowed to talk about psychedelics, so I'm not going to talk about my perspective of it. So,
It's open to interpretation. What's your interpretation, Alex?
When I was writing the song, it didn't start with me talking to a snake, but as we got into it, I thought, wow, if I start having a conversation with a snake and we start bringing that into the whole thing, it could make the song a lot more interesting lyric-wise and feeling-wise. And then I really got into that vibe. And yeah, there we have it. It's a bit of a Garden of Eden vibe as well, sort of motif coming through on that one, together with the reptiles and immortality on Senescence. Yeah.
And how do you go about playing to what they're experimenting with? You're obviously playing drums, so the drums come in.
No, I'm very much the kind of drummer that will, don't ask me to play a beat for you and expect something amazing. Like, I very much play off of the other guys, and I find I drum better that way. So if someone starts off with a bass line or a guitar riff, I'll start adding in and change it over time. The more I jam it, the more I experiment with the beat and try and make it a bit more unique and as interesting as I can. I definitely just come in and add my own texture to what the guys write, you know.
And bass and lyrics, that's quite an unusual mix. How do you find playing live that mix?
I actually prefer it, hey? Kendall said it gives us depth, and I completely agree. You're not always in the mood to write lyrics, put yourself out there, be a front man. It's not an easy job. So to be able to sit back and chill and jam some funky bass lines or whatever is a pleasure, and then come back and you know, do some vocals on the next song.
Not too many bands have done that. I think Sting was one, and Primus. Well, Sting and Primus are like different sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But at least you're occupying a middle ground of that
Sting's
spectrum.
playing bass and singing at the same time. The way we would mainly do it is either Jay would be playing bass or Kendall, and then I'd be doing vocals, or I'd be playing bass and Kendall would be doing vocals, something like that.
Yeah, whoever's not playing bass is
Singing.
singing, yeah.
Gets to concentrate more on that.
Or the
euphonium.
I haven't even brought that thing to a live gig yet. It was only recorded on those couple of tracks in the studio so far. I need to bring it to. I took it to the jam room once, maybe. I need to try and work it into the set slowly.
When we were listening to the album, Emma and I in the car, I was like, "Is that a euphorbia?"
Euphorbia.
Euphorbia is a tree of
Riverine
succulent.
euphorbia.
No, David, he's not playing the euphorbia.
Yeah, it's an interesting word. It actually means sweet sounding. Euphonous in English even, but it means sweet sounding, and it does have quite a sweet tone. It's got a nice warm sound. It's kind of like a French horn. Well, you can make it sound like different things. You can do a fair imitation of a trombone on it as well, without the slide noises, obviously. And maybe a French horn kind of vibe, tuberish bass kind of. It's quite versatile, but it's got a nice sound.
It's used twice on the album, and I think in two very different ways. One to support Sea Legs, which is your reggae. You've often got that brass section in a reggae.
Yeah, it's more punchy. Thing. You know, I try to use it more like a trombone in the reggae song. In the other one, it's kind of just ooh, long notes. Yeah, kind of using it like a textural kind of sound.
And pulling off some of those high notes live? Because you're going really high in some of the songs and then really low as well.
Probably the high bits are falsetto, which is a technique
vocals,
of singing,
yeah.
which you kind of using a different part of your throat.
In one song, you even kind of did a growl.
I don't know if that was me. Did someone do a growl?
Scorpio, there was a bit of a growl.
Could have been me. Yeah, probably me.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well-
Really liked it because it's like a backing lyric and then it comes in gently in the middle and then roar.
Oh, it goes, all I could take.
That's the
All I
one.
could
Yeah.
take. All I could take. Oh, yeah. I'm the bottom guy. I'm the last one.
Oh, so it's both of you.
It's
Yeah,
both
it's
of
both
us.
of us.
Oh, that's so appropriate. Yeah, nice work.
1, 2 kisses is all it would take. All it would take. Behind mandibles, exposing fangs. 1, 2 kisses is all it would take. All it would take. Scorpio.
So that's actually something I think is quite a feature. If I listen to these songs like one after the other, there's like a very big call and response thing happening throughout the album, which is actually a very African music style. It's something that seems to have sunk in via osmosis from being South Africans. If I listen to the songs, there's always, even in something like Senescence, you'll say a line, goes, I remember traversing the forest. And then you'll say something, and then there's a sound that goes.
I remember traversing the forest. There I saw slither a snake.
There's always the interplay of the lyrics and the sound, which is, very cool. Like it's actually, like I say, it's actually from African music, that kind of element.
How do you bring that into the live jams? Because there's a lot happening. For example, those backing tracks.
We're pretty on top of it when it comes to Scorpio. We jam it the way it is on the album for the most part.
I think it is a bit more stripped down when we jam it, but those sort of
It'll be a little bit
It
more.
will be,
But we will, in future, I think, be adding a lot more of the recording stuff in.
So
Yeah.
I saw you live a while back last year sometime.
It's a Music Kitchen gig, right?
Music Kitchen. Is it going to be different the next time?
Definitely.
Oh yeah, it's evolved a lot since then. Those were quite sparse arrangements of all those songs. Like if we played at that gig, I think Tamasha. I'm pretty
Yes,
sure we
I was
played
gonna ask
Tamasha.
about that name
Now
too.
you listen to that version of Tamasha, and you listen to what Tamasha sounds like on the recording. It's very different. The other one is very, very stripped back. Like it's at its like core elements. It's like a bass line and a keyboard. Everyone's singing basically. But now Niels started playing his singing part on that on guitar. So a lot of the elements got transposed and extra keyboards and added in more stuff to the beat. And yeah, it's been filled in a lot. So
It sounds excellent.
It will sound very different. There's like bass lines now that in the recorded one that didn't exist at that time. The whole thing kind of got a bit of a reworking. But even Senescence, which was one of our like main songs, it's got a bit of a reworking before we could even include it in our set list as a song. At one point we were going to discard that song because it wasn't kind of working. And we discovered there was too much needless repetition in it. So we altered the structure. Your arrangement of a song can kind of make or break it. You got to arrange stuff very carefully to make it work. We had a couple of songs. I think Camel Travel was another one we were going to discard at one point. Look what we ended up with as a recording. It's this cool, like epic, long song. It's another one that was going to go on the scrap heap for some reason or other. So you got to use what you can in a clever way. Otherwise, it gets relegated to the dustbin of history.
The dustbin of Dropbox.
Yeah.
Okay, gents. The band name debate. What's in a name? High Water Bridge.
We probably debated that the longest out of anything we've ever discussed on our little WhatsApp chat group. Like Kendall says, all the way back till 2018. Before we had a band name, I was using like band name generators online and trying all kinds of different combinations. And then I think actually High Water Bridge is actually a lyric it's actually a lyric in Tamasha.
Climbing high just to get a view upon a high water bridge, which will have to see me through.
And I think that's where you got the idea from, Alex. And then we also used to play a lot where, Bridget, she used to sing with us while jamming. And then we always thought it would be a nice sort of remembrance of her to have the word bridge and Bridget. That is just kind of how it sort of came about in the band name.
There's a lot of connection to place and history.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Again, adding to those layers and layers and layers of connections and spirals and tendrils. I think that this album has. There's really a lot about it, I think, that's symbolic. Yeah. Obviously, in the band name, I mean, it's a direct reference to someone who's very special to all of us in this room and indescribably special to someone who plays in the band.
Once we did reach the point of the idea of having the word bridge in the band, though, it was pretty quick eventually to wrap up the endless WhatsApp debates over band name. And yeah, we just moved forward then.
Band names are a totally absurd thing, though, to try and choose.
Yeah.
Well, you just need a crazy drummer sometimes to blurt out some random statement like tofu goat to arrive at the right.
Yeah, Donny is a living band name generator. We usually just went with whatever came out of his mouth.
But he came up with Hectic Electric as well.
The resonance of that guy's drums must really dominate the jam room these days.
Yeah, no, there's probably a few echoes in there. He hits them harder than most.
And the name Tamasha?
Sort of to follow the lyrics I do, where I sort of try to paint a picture with a vibe. Tamasha is one of those lyrics where I was heading more towards a Sanskrit, Hindi type feeling. Some experiences in Cape Town that I had, and the lyrics are very abstract, that's for sure. So you can sort of read them as you wish. But it all sort of came around that idea and me trying to give it a bit more of an Eastern angle. And actually the High Water Bridge lyric part in there came after we decided on the band name, because that song was always sort of a work in progress for me. At the end, I was really happy with the way Tamasha turned out. You mentioned Tricky as one of the influences. I hear Tricky on Tamasha, just one of those things that filtered through into the song.
Yeah, it's got quite a strong 90s English trip-hop vibe to it, like Massive Attack and Tricky, and I get quite a strong element from that as well.
That's exactly the band I was looking for earlier. Massive Attack, and I couldn't think of the name.
The three of us here are big trip-hop fans. and
Yeah, 90s trip-hop for life, yo.
Yeah, sure. Let's go back to it.
It's true.
Especially as you get older and you can't listen to such heavy music. Well, I don't know, Nick likes heavy music, but I found as I get older, I find it more difficult to listen to heavy music. It's kind of like an assault on your senses, You kind of start calming down a bit and you want to engage in more tranquil things. Trip hop kind of satisfies that kind of I'm getting too old to listen to metal anymore kind of thing quite well.
So when he starts ululating and humming and other weird things into the microphone, how do you as a metal fan feel or respond on the drums?
No, I'm keen on it. I'm open to anything, I like anything that's different. Really.
The funny thing is, when you were talking about Scorpio, you were talking about the ululating like it was something that Kendall added in at the very end of the recording. Believe it or not, first time we jammed that song in the jam room, there he was doing it.
He just loves ululating into a microphone.
And it fits the song,
with a phaser.
Even now he's going to use some samples from this podcast, probably.
Yeah, actually, Scorpio, that song also started it's a very sparse. I think it was in response to actually Nick not being at band practice one time. He didn't make it. If there's no drummer at band practice, then we got this thing like Jason is a drummer, luckily, so he fills in. I can fill in a bit. But then we had a song where it kind of just started with the aforementioned beatboxing because Nick wasn't actually at the band practice. And then suddenly and Alex got his lyrics. He had his weird little poem, his little horror story poem, which is awesome. It would actually make a good...
Is that the one about being underground?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a B grade horror film kind of plot. It's awesome.
Yep, that's what I was doing.
You did it very well.
Yeah, it's kind of started off as this very sparse thing, and there was nothing much going on. There was a beatbox and a poem, and Jay had that doo-doo. It's like a little 2-note keyboard bass line. That was it. There was nothing else.
Sounded like Jaws.
Myself 6 feet below. Seems like I've fallen through a trapdoor. can't escape. There's no way out. I can't hear much under this trapdoor.
Yeah, it's kind of it is kind of
Yeah, it does actually.
No. It's not the same interval, semitone interval. It's a different interval, but it's close. It kind of creates a bit of a tension, you know. So in those days of the music, there was lots of space to fill up. So I kind of had a microphone with a whole bunch of effects set up with it, a delay pedal or a phaser. So now I've got to fill in a space. So I was kind of also in the early days like an extra layer of keyboards a lot of the time more than a singer. My kind of role as being a more regular singer kind of evolved with the band. In the beginning, I was basically just like sound effects. That was kind of my role in the band. And I kind of still see my role in the band as sound effects manager, if you want. Like, I'm good with that, like soundscaping and painting in the lines, coloring in the lines, you know, like if you think the structure of a song is like the outline of something, you know, it's like the core of the thing. It's like the basis of your drawing. But then there's still the little shadings and such.
Yeah, I mean, I felt weird for Kendall at the beginning. So he's coming to jam with us, right? There's already a vocalist. There's already some guitars. There's already some bass.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything I do.
Standing there with a loop pedal and a microphone.
Keyboard player.
He made a way to make himself sort of indispensable to the project, you know, which
Just nudged in
Like
there.
a parasite. I was like a parasite onto their band. But they got an album out of it, so they can be thankful.
No, it worked. It's something I admire, that he could come in there without any given role to fill in for Nick sometimes on drums, and didn't always have a bass guitar. But yeah, that's High Water Bridge.
You've spoken about forests and deserts. They're quite extreme ends of a spectrum. Did you add the beach middle? I know you love the beach.
No. I had nothing to do with any of those lyrics. I think I only did the lyrics for that song Julien and Drama Donkin. And what are the other ones?
Sea Legs.
Oh, Sea Legs and
Troberits.
Troberits, yeah, that's the one. That's also kind of got a very kind of feminine theme. We noticed that there's a lot of themes about the kind of feminine principle running through this album. A lot of focus on women.
She wanders through a sea of sound, picking melodies out of the clouds. Heard her voice through a phonograph, disembodied and alive.
And female energies, and I don't think that was by design either. Even in the name, we're talking about Bridget, who used to be in the band. Like, there's a tribute kind of to her in the name. So yeah, it just ended up being almost like this big exploration in the sort of lyrical themes of like more feminine things, which is interesting to me, because we're getting to a point in history where our ideas about what constitutes masculinity and femininity are kind of becoming a little bit more jumbled up, and the lines are getting a bit more blurred. So yeah, it's interesting for me as someone who came through a very like heavily macho male dominated kind of system, typical South African education system, all boys school, glorifying the rugby players and whatnot, you know, to kind of see these shifts in society now where the feminine principle is making a little bit more noise, you know. So it's cool. It's interesting to see that come out in the themes of the songwriting as well.
I would say that your sound as a genre isn't very masculine either. It's not to say that it's feminine, but it's not particularly masculine.
Yeah, it's not hard. Like, we don't make like hard in your face music.
You give each other space as well. I like that. I've always liked that about a bunch of bands who give each other space. There's a lot of openness to the sound, but then there's punctuations of different themes and genres, and it's excellent. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we've all got space to maneuver there, for sure. There's some good harmonies and some beautiful parts, if I can call it that.
Yeah, it's like kind of expressing more like kind of gentler emotions and things as well, It's not laced with aggression.
So that's why Nick didn't show up to some of the rehearsals, because he knew that you guys had to figure out where you were emotionally so that you can get that written into the lyrics of the song. He's like, no, the moon is full tonight.
No,
I'm definitely staying
tonight.
away from you two.
We can, all of us have got history in heavier music. I mean, even Nillis, I remember when the early days we used to jam with him, he used to crank it loud and hard, He used to be into like hard rock.
Well, he still does when we jam
like
sometimes.
Progressive stuff like Tool, Smashing Pumpkins. He loves stuff like that, always with that element of spaciness. But, he likes to crank it and churn out his riffs. I think, a lot of the time I was complaining about it being too loud. I'm like the chief defaulter on complaining about loudness because my ears are a bit wonky after years of band, and I had tinnitus at one point, but it's gone away, which is cool. So maybe we can crank it a bit louder now again. Now that my tinnitus is cured. Earplugs for the win.
The nice thing about Nelis's spectral guitar delay sound at the moment as well is, like you say, the space. As a bassist, I've sort of never found it so easy to find room to lay down a riff or a groove here and there, and it must be the same for vocals and every other instrument as well.
Who's the lead guitarist for Pearl Jam?
It's Mike McCready.
He steps back for like 2 minutes at a time sometimes, and he'll have a cigarette, and then he'll step in.
Well, they've also got 3 guitar players in that band sometimes, so there's people filling up the space, because there's Stone Gossard, who writes a lot of the riffs. He'll also do lead sometimes, but he's, I say, more like a rhythm player, and Eddie Vedder plays a lot of rhythm guitar as well. Some of the songs are his riffs too. So when you've got different guys doing the same role as you, there are times where you can step back. But in Nelis's case, he's the only guitar player, even though I filled in little bits of slide guitar.
I was going to ask, there was definitely a Kendall sound to some of those guitar riffs.
Yeah, I filled in, like I say, like trying to act more like a keyboard again, doing guitar texturing and layering in places where I thought it needed it, because sometimes when you're recording, the context is different to the jam room. When you're in a room with the sound being generated in the room, you don't feel like it's empty. The sound is filling up all the space. The ambient sound is filling up all the space. But when you're working in this kind of environment with the sound coming out the speakers like this, stuff can sound like a little bit empty and lacking. We used to these like multi-layered professional recordings that have got a lot of punch to them. We've been listening to this like really good quality music since we were teenagers and kids, basically. So you record one layer of something and it sounds a little bit lacking and lame. You know what I mean? So you got to do these little extra things on recordings to spice it up a bit, to give it more impact, because that's what the professionals do. They layer the living hell out of their recordings.
I was going to say that most of us in this room are, I know, late 30s. I don't know, Nick, actually. Yes. We're mostly in our late 30s. The up-and-coming generations are more privy to technology. They're more familiar with editing suites and that kind of thing. You're obviously very familiar with that. But how do you feel younger people out now hearing live music, wanting to create live music, will approach a project like you have in contrast to how you've done it? Because you've brought a lot of the 90s and the early 2000s sound to your original music. How do you think there's going to be a progression or a change in the near future to the sound of what you're doing?
They'll just use samples, bro. It'll all be samples. It's much easier to make music with samples than out of live instruments. Like when you've got live instruments, you have to actually physically record a thing with a microphone. Whereas a lot of sounds come prepackaged these days, and all that work's been done for you. So you're kind of skipping a step.
Yeah, technology's changed the music industry big time. And like I said, that's where DJs come in. They just like press a button and play samples and loop things. And we prefer playing the actual instrument. And
ultimately, even though we used a lot of electronic elements, all those recordings are, vast majority of the drums come out of the jam room. We recorded those drums in that jam room. Everyone played their parts sitting here in that corner where you're sitting right now. Nelis tracked his entire album sitting right there where you're sitting. He played it, it was blood, sweat and tears kind of stuff, So I think we're proud of that, it was us playing.
There is a lot of process, yeah.
Yeah, enormous process. Very, very multi-layered.
I had a conversation with Jonathan Silverman, the visual artist, and he spoke about process as being everything. And that's really what I like about your album. There's years of influence, listening, thinking about things, changing things, And all of those connections to the historical additions to your music makes it an album that's very special. So I really would encourage people to listen to it and think about, where does this come from? So Alex, that's a question I have for you. You speak to someone who you haven't seen since matric. We were both in the same year of high school. What would you say to them? What is this about?
Well, coming to process, I completely agree with it. The act of making the album, as long and sometimes hard as it was, is actually more fun and more rewarding than having the album at the end, because that whole journey of actually getting there was just fantastic and such a satisfying experience. I'm not very good when it comes to self-promotion, so if I had to meet someone from a trick and say, hey, here's my album, I'd let them listen to it and see what they think. You know, when it comes to music, it's not a competition. People like certain things, people don't like certain things. High Water Bridge is not everyone's cup of tea. For a lot of people, it seems to be, you know, getting them kind of excited. So yeah, I would just leave it up to them. I'd say, hey, this is what I've been doing for a while, and sort of hope that I've sort of evolved at my art, so to speak, and maybe someone can appreciate that. However much anyone else enjoys the album, the way I feel about the album, it will never be topped.
And Nick, looking back, musical journey, how do you feel about this album as symbolic of it or representative of it?
Yeah, it's definitely been just a very creative process for me. I am a very creative person, and a lot of it is spontaneous for me. But yeah, I'm very proud of what we put out, and I'm very proud to share it with people and let people hear it. It may surprise a lot of people that used to know me that I actually didn't play drums or anything like that, or been involved in a project like this. But yeah, I'm just proud to share it, and I love getting feedback from people, and yeah.
And Kendall, looking back, the 30 years of music or more in Port Elizabeth, Eastern Cape, southern coast of South Africa, you represent a lot for this area. How do you feel about what you've produced here?
Yeah, I don't know about that, man. But yeah, for me personally, it was also, it's almost like, feels like a culmination of like a long time, you know. It's the first time I've really managed to actually even complete a full album like this length, you know. It's 50 minutes, 50 plus minutes of music. We've only ever made like EPs before, you know, like 6 or 7 track EPs, you know, that were much shorter.
Was that Strange Little Man, the one with Milkwood Avenue?
Yeah, it was one Strange Little Man one, and then we made 3 in the Jedi Rollers as well. And also Flipside, do you remember that band? That was with, also Jason was in that band at once upon a time as well, but not for that recording. That was also with Richard, you know, I used to play keys with Richard and Caleb and Marisa, I don't know if you remember her. She used to play the percussion. And yeah, so I made some EPs back in the day, but I've never ever, and those were always, you go in and record the stuff live. You've got 2 days because the studio time is horrifically expensive and you can't really afford it. You go in, you record the stuff live as a band, and you get out. This was, like multi-track recording, you know, where you construct the thing piece by piece by piece, layer by layer. And never something this length. Yeah, so for me, it's a little personal mountain I have finally reached at nearly 40 years of age. You know, like you say, the younger people maybe have more access to the stuff than we have. This has kind of been a 20-year process of accumulating this equipment, getting to the point in our lives where we have time to even attempt something like this. You know what I mean? Like life is a struggle when you're young, you know, you got to sort your stuff out. So to get to a point where we've even got time and space to create something like this it's a first, you know, to be able to actually put out a full album. But now that we've done it and we've got the stuff, we know how to do it. We can do it probably a bit more efficiently next time, and hopefully you can just keep going with it. Do it again. Now that we've done it once, like climbing any mountain. Once you've done it once, easier the next time.
What's the best way to access your music?
Sort of depends what they like. If they're on Facebook all the time or Instagram all the time, they'll be getting it there. YouTube is definitely a big one. And these days, you know, your Spotify's and Deezers and all of that, they seem to be doing the business. So
I can't use Spotify. I don't know what the hell's going on in that thing. I tried to listen to our album in Spotify and I gave up. I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I don't use any of these platforms. For me, I'd be like YouTube, because that's the most easily accessible. Like you turn it on and there it is. You know what I mean? It's easy to find stuff.
You've sort of gotten used to listening to albums on YouTube over the past couple of years as well. I mean, the music industry is changing so much year by year at the moment. Like, there's been a huge learning curve releasing an album in this day and age. It would, if we did this 5 years ago, it would have been a completely different process. Yeah.
Yeah, selling physical copy.
Although I still want to press some vinyl, but
Who is it that sends you a physical copy? Is it iTunes?
Amazon. So yeah, it's not there yet, but I hear that within 6 weeks you would be able to order a physical CD from Amazon.com.
How do you make anything off of that?
Yeah, there's a small percentage that comes through to a distribution site. We chose to use TuneCore, and again, there are so many different streaming sites. There are just as many distribution sites, so we had to make a choice to go with one, and they sort of handle. TuneCore's handling distribution to 150 streaming sites, and then we are going to, within 2 months, sort of see sales reports, etc., and be able to sort of get more info on how we're doing on the financial aspect of it. But yeah, that's not the most important thing. Yeah.
High Water Bridge, I will definitely be supporting you somehow online. So you said within 2 months that option will be available. I hope it is. I hope other people will go and look into it. Maybe you could bombard your social media with that information when it becomes available. So if people could keep looking for High Water Bridge, listen to the songs, give comments on YouTube, Instagram.
I think it's been quite interesting for us to actually put an album out and then see how you have to interact with people around it, because none of us are used to that. I hadn't even logged on to Facebook for 3 years before we released this album.
Is that all?
Yeah, you've probably been away longer, but it was a bit of a shock, you know, to kind of tread in those waters again. It's you got this lot of interaction, but yeah, I mean, you got to engage with these platforms, like it's the way the world works now. So I think it was cool as well to check how it all works, how we can do it better potentially next time. The whole thing's like a big learning curve.
Experimental process.
Yeah, do it once and see what happens.
It has been a very successful experiment. So we are approaching the last 2 minutes of this conversation. Is there anything anyone would like to say, get it off their chest, just end with that sums up your feeling about this album, or any advice to listeners about anything else you'd like to get off your chest?
We welcome any questions from anyone on Facebook or get in touch with us personally. Happy to discuss anything with this album as much as possible. And we really hope you enjoy it.
And we hope to be gigging soon.
If you do give it a bash, keep an open mind. Don't approach it through with a preconception of what you think it should be, and you'll probably enjoy it a lot more.
Many different cups of tea out there.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really am grateful for what you've done, and very proud to be in the same room as you guys, know you guys, have a history with you guys.
A shot for chatting to us, Dave. We appreciate it as well, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
We'll do it again.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Please never, ever, ever say goodbye. 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 Please never, ever, ever say goodbye.